Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbale in Abuja. Since the assumption of office of President Bola Tinubu, it has been one day, one interesting scenario playing out. Now, every day we are treated with one national issues or the other, and the presidential villa has been a maker of some sort, a lot of visitation we've seen over the past days. On Friday, a popular ex-Niger Delta agitator, Mr. Asari Dokubo, was there to visit the president, Bola Tinubu. He accused the Nigerian military of being behind 99% of oil theft in Nigeria. Mr. Dokubo made the accusation after his private meeting with President Tinubu in his office on Friday. He stated that the president has promised to investigate the allegations of huge oil bunkering, illegal oil bunkering by notorious naval commanders that are kingpins, and promised to take decisive action to halt the shameful act. Mr. Dokubo added that there are powerful cabals operating from Abuja, vowing that these powerful forces in place have now met their match, and many people will soon be marching to Kuje prison. He has volunteered to use his boys to assist and do the necessary things to halt the evil activities. Take a listen to Asari Dokubo.
99% of oil theft can be traced to the Nigerian military, the Army and the Navy especially. The Army and the Navy intimidate the civil defense, who are by status the people who are supposed to guard these pipelines. They receive a lot of money from NNPC, PCL, and the IOCs, and just across the corner, you will see a houseboat. A few meters from the houseboat, you will see an oil bunkering refinery or tapping directly from oil well heads. It is very pathetic now. What is happening in the Niger Delta in the past 8 years was unprecedented in the history of oil production anywhere in the world. These military men are harmed from the Army and the Navy. Nothing will happen. The president has promised to take decisive action to make sure that this does not continue. It is brought to an end. It is very shameful.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Navy has reacted to what you just heard from Asari Dokubo, an ex-Niger Delta agitator. The Navy says, quote, the military, if Asari Dokubo is seeking some form of relevance and alleges that there is a cabal of military people that are involved in crude oil theft, let him bring the names. Nobody is afraid of getting the names of those involved in crude oil theft. The Nigerian Navy is actively involved in the fight against crude oil theft and the resources in the Niger Delta. So, for anybody to say that there is a cabal of military officers, the only simple thing is to bring the evidence, bring the names. End of quote. Let's get some perspectives to this matter from a former Group Executive Director of Sahara Energy and a former governorship candidate of the APC in the Rivers State 2019-2023 governorship election, Mr. Tonye. He joins us live here in our studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Cole, for joining us.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much indeed. I mean, the last time you were here, we were talking about subsidy and the criminal racketeering that goes on within the system, and how much of money Nigeria loses from subsidy. Now we're talking about oil theft. This is another massive criminal ring of some highly placed persons. There are a lot of people who say what Asari Dokubo is saying perhaps is not new. But then, as a major player in that sector, what Dokubo said, true or false?
It's multidimensional. He has spoken about one part of the problem. And if you listen to him carefully, he said that you would find installations that are meant to guard the the facilities, and right next to the facility, you see bunkering operations going on. And that's a fact. It's something that we see. It's something that we know occurs. You also see along the creeks where they are building, there are certain types of boats that they build, huge wooden boats that can only carry stolen crude. And we see them building it in the open, in public, so we know where this is being done. So one part of this is that it's open for everybody to see. The other part of it is that can it be stopped? And what Asari is talking about and what everybody should be addressing is what are the solutions to solving this? Because it's a problem for Nigeria, it's a problem for the state, Rivers State is part of that problem, it's a problem for the communities, and it's a problem for the people. So it's a huge problem and it's something that must be addressed.
I mean, and I'll be mentioning some figures now that are mind-boggling. If a governor of a state, for example, former Governor Yinson Wike mentioned names, that he said a brigade commander of a GOC in around Rivers State is involved in names, and he says what he's planning to do is to be the chief of army staff and all of that. He's came out to say that, and it shows that there is some iota of truth in some of the things. And the Channels Television has done some expose on that. My colleagues Olu Phillips gone into the creeks, gone into some of this installation. That particular pipe that you see, that rusty one that goes there, an illegal line that has been attached to an official line, which they say has been there for almost 10 years. That means this has been going on for several years. And you said that within the community, it's in the open. That means it's multifaceted. The community is in connivance with some of these people. Highly placed persons are in connivance with these people. And the question is, some of these badges, can they be lifted outside of the shores of Nigeria
Absolutely.
Without the notice of the authorities?
Okay, so that's a critical question. Right from the first time that I went into this business, oil and gas, right from the beginning, it was clear that you could not move a barge of water from Bonny Terminal, from Okrika Terminal, all the way down any of the rivers, Ombrero River, Bonny River, without the authorities knowing, boarding it, questioning. So the first aspect of it is that any kind of vessel that moves along any of the rivers in Rivers State will be observed by an installation. So to say that they don't know is not true. They know. The question at the end of the day is, why does it persist? And this is what I will tell you. The first aspect of it is that once the authorities, then it depends on who is at the head. Today we have a no-nonsense president in place. So Asari goes to him and says to him, address this issue. Number one, address the money flow. Money is flowing. This is a huge cash business. So follow the money. Once you follow the money, you'll be able to follow the source. That's very, very important.
But I mean, sorry, just on one point, please. I'd like us to bring, as our viewers are watching and learning from your expertise and your understanding of, this is a deep several years of the business that you have operated. Now, we understand, and correct me if I'm right, of the information that I have is wrong. Look, that some of these monies are in cash.
No, but you can't keep cash under the table all the time.
Okay. So if they sell these thieves, either highly placed or cabals, they sell these in exchange for dollars.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are different parts of this business. You are talking of the end part of the business, end point, because there are those who do the massive ones, and so they export Nigerian crude. By the time you're having an illegal vessel that is coming into Nigerian waters, a vessel is not something that is hidden. It can be seen. We have satellite technology today, which means that you can actually observe all of Nigerian territorial waters using satellite. So if an illegal ship comes in and moves, it's clear. You have ships that have trackers, and every ship is meant to put on their GPS tracker so that you know where they are globally through Lloyd's shipping companies. So you know. Now, once a ship puts off its transponder, you know that it's there for illegal business, and you should be able to see it. So there is that end of the business. In that one, you can track it internationally. You can get the international community to be a part of it. Crude has signature. In other words, any crude that you take, you will know by the signature of that crude where it comes from. which means that you can track the crude all the way back to its source. If that crude goes into any country, you can find it. So there are international laws that you can actually play to begin to address this, but it takes a concerted effort. And it starts at the desk of the president, who must decide that I want to bring an end to this. Nigeria is not the first place where illegal bunkering has been going on. It's not. But countries have decisively stopped it. Pipeline vandalization is not unique to Nigeria. But when countries have decided that we're going to address this, they address it. There's an economic part of it. And so the problem in the Niger Delta at the end of the day is that people, they monetize or they weaponize poverty to such an extent right now that economic activity around crude oil bunkering is now one of the major sources of finance in the area. And we have to address that.
So you said that oil has signature.
Yes, it does.
There is a lawmaker, Johnson Agbonyima, a former lawmaker from Edo State, who as far back as 2014, 2015, 2016, and I've had him on this program, and he had exposed how international, multinational companies who our crude are landing in unknown destination or destinations that we Nigerian authority did not approve of. And these countries are aware that Nigerian crude are being stolen onto this destination. So you talk about political will. Where do you think that President Tinubu, for example, could start from?
So I'll give you a live example. Way back in 1999-2000, Nigerian crude was being stolen regularly bunkering from here. So it's not a new issue. And it was going to 3 main refineries in Africa, West Africa. It was going to Cameroon, it was going to Ivory Coast, and it was going to Ghana at the time. The Nigerian government stepped in and entered into a bilateral agreement with the countries, Ghana, Ivory Coast, mainly, I'm sure of those two, telling them, first of all, stop taking Nigerian crude for free. And we'll go into an agreement with you to make sure that you get the crude for your refineries. And that's how the government-to-government agreements between those countries started. Immediately, those countries stopped taking Nigerian crude. That problem was resolved. Brazil was another place that used to take Nigerian crude at the time, stolen crude. So there are countries. Now, the country that is losing, which is Nigeria, must sit down with those countries that are receiving and work out an agreement with them that ensures that anybody who is bringing Nigerian crude stolen with a signature to their countries must be prosecuted. Nigeria has to do that. That's on that end. That stops the market, and you must address that. It was done before, and it addressed it. And so West African countries do not take Nigerian crude anymore, stolen crude anymore. If you go to Senegal, if you go to Ivory Coast, if you go to Ghana, if you go to Cameroon, where Nigerian crude goes in there, whenever it goes in there, it's legitimate crude.
As far back as 2005, Nigeria oil production, local oil production, went as far as 2.4 million barrels per day. We are oscillating between 1 million and 1 million to 1.2, 1.3. I understand that recently we did our oil production increased by 18% to about 1.18 million barrels per day in May of this year. Still very low considering the mark that we have the potentials of reaching. And for a lot of people who are wondering that what does this mean? The million barrel per day is what we can push out and get into the refinery and get fuel into the. Unfortunately, we are not able to refine on Nigerian soil. We have to batch them and take them outside of the country. Could this oil theft be majorly responsible for us not being able to meet up our markup standard or the gauge on which Nigeria wanted to produce?
That's pure maths, and I'm glad you just did it that way. If 20 years ago we were doing 2.4 million barrels, apart from general maintenance of oil wells, new wells that are being drilled and all of that, you should be at least maintaining 2.4. If new wells are coming up, you should be going up. But to go down to 1 million tells you that there is a big problem. It should be a concern even if...
That's more than half.
More than half. If we assume, first of all, let us assume for the benefit of everybody that there is nothing like oil theft in Nigeria. It doesn't happen, it's an aberration and all of that. And your production drops by more than half. Should that not be a troubling cause? It should worry you as a country that you're losing half your barrels. And then you will go and find out what it is. Maybe the oil wells are being depleted. Maybe your reservoir is being depleted and all that. We know for a fact that that's not the case. So what is the issue? The issue is that a lot of our oil is being siphoned. Pipelines have multiple areas for which they have been unplugged and are being depleted. In the world today, there's something called pigging. In other words, your pipeline, you can measure pressure along a pipeline and you will know when that pipeline has been interrupted. It is not new technology. That technology has been there for the last 50 years. If we wanted to know in Nigeria the exact point where a pipe has been siphoned, interrupted, we will know. And so it requires very strong political will to tackle the issue of oil theft on the one hand. But then there's a second part which we must address. There's an economic issue. Those who are involved in oil bunkering today, if you want to stop them from doing that, you have the kingpins and you have the underlings. What are you doing with the underlings? Are you giving them new jobs? Are you bringing an economic perspective into their area? You must address that. It's not just about those who are sitting down at the top of the pyramid.
Yes, an urgent need for a state of emergency on that sector, isn't it?
I believe so.
Even in terms of the normal activities, aside from the nefarious activities, the normal activities is being impeded by some very sad scenario that are playing out. I mean, that's just another story for another day, sure, on how much we are losing from not being able to localize production and end-to-end production of oil in Nigeria. That's another story for another day, isn't it?
See, maybe I can address that very, very quickly, because you mentioned a state of emergency, and I agree with you. This must be attacked head-on. You might get to a situation where Nigeria might get up one day and say every oil well onshore must be shut down. Let us shut down everything, not produce one barrel of oil for a period of time so that we can clean this whole area and start this whole process afresh. If we do not begin to address the issues now, that may be where we're heading to. You may see a situation where the only production is offshore and all onshore production is shut down. If you don't begin to address the issue now, that's where we're heading to. And we must do everything to avoid going there.
So let's give Nigerians some sense of a perspective on the losses so that we can understand. I mean, we established that as far back as 2005, we did as much as 2.4 million barrels per day. And we're doing between 1.2 million barrels per day. Now, that is definitely less than 50% of what we have the capacity to produce. Now, from the NNPC GMD, as of September or November last year, it said Nigeria lost about 470,000 barrels per day of crude oil theft monthly. So it brings us to about over 5 million barrels in a year that Nigeria has lost. And if you look at it, NATI also said that Nigeria lost 619.7 million barrels of crude oil, valued at 16.25 trillion naira to crude oil theft between 2009 and 2020. That is within a 12-year period. Now, within 12-year period, I can't remember, what was the allocation of our budget last year? I mean, this year again? That's less than what we have lost in. So that means the amount or the magnitude of what is being lost to the hands of individuals and these criminal gangs, this network, is more than what can run two countries in Africa for a whole year.
So to even make matters worse, oil is cyclical in terms of pricing, but there are certain issues in the world that happen, and when it happens, it causes the oil price to either escalate very, very high or go very low. In the height of our 1 million barrel loss, that is the time when oil prices shot to one of its highest. When the Russian-Ukraine crisis came in, Nigeria essentially lost tremendous value. You remember, I believe it was during Babangida's time, there was something called the oil boom at that time when the first Gulf War came. Mm-hmm. What Nigeria made from that oil boom was part of what set up Abuja in the first instance. So you see the kind of value that you lose when you play around with these things. Nigeria cannot afford to continue playing with oil. The oil sector says that there's something called peak oil. Each time we look at it, is it going to happen in 10 years? Is it going to happen in 20 years? One thing is certain, that oil may not be the primary source of driving energy in the future, which means now is the time for you to make what you can, prepare for the future, and channel your resources that you're making in oil in developing other things. UAE has done it. Saudi Arabia, one of the largest producers of oil today, is transitioning away from oil, creating one of the largest energy cities in the world that is powered totally without oil, so that they can prepare for the future.
They are already seeing what's the advantage or the disadvantage of oil,
exactly,
and the gap that is going to create in the future, and they're tapping into it.
In the future. And so they're dealing with that. Every country is looking at what alternative they can use their oil money today to prepare for their tomorrow. Meanwhile, we are losing the revenue that we should be using for tomorrow. We're destroying our ecology, our economy, we're destroying everything within the Niger Delta instead of preparing for tomorrow. We need to stop. And that's why I agreed with you when you said that should we declare a state of emergency in oil? I think we need to.
If you were President Tinubu, what would you do? With your understanding of the oil sector.
The first thing is that we must get into the Niger Delta and address the people of the Niger Delta. They must feel that they're part of the solution. Right now, they don't think they're part of the solution. What they see is that they have been abandoned completely, and as a result of that, the oil is theirs to take and do as they like. They don't feel that there is a common sense in oil development coming into them. So you need to deal with that. So President Tinubu will first have to have a multifaceted discussion with the people of the Niger Delta, who are feeling the brunt of all of this, and then make them see that you must be a provider of the solution moving forward. Anything that Nigeria is going to do, if oil stops flowing from the Niger Delta in the next 20, 30 years, with the kind of development we have in the Niger Delta and the poverty we have in the Niger Delta today, those who will suffer the most tomorrow will be the people from the Niger Delta.
And this cleanup that was flagged off how many years ago, what about it? That's your state, that's your...
We have
nothing has happened.
We have not seen the impact at all. We haven't seen the impact.
That's sad enough. I mean, and this brings to mind, and when you were talking about how the communities also need to understand the implication of some of these activities, these illegal activities. Just in Lagos, for example, you know what is happening? The rail line, the police just yesterday or 2 days ago caught a young man who had cut part of the rail track and was going to go sell it, part of the steel. The beams of the third mainland bridge, the same people who are already breaking it off and going to sell part of the beam. Now, there is a sense that there are people within that area
who know what is going on.
And when you say that people around that area see in the open the canoes and whatever that is being used to smuggle or to do the illegal bunkering, it comes to the community policing, the community involvement in all of this. There seems to be a very big problem. The Navy is not happy. The military is not happy with Asari Dokubo's statement. What do you think offends the military the most in all of this?
First and foremost, I believe that the military's annoyance or anger will come from the fact that it's said that 99% is
caused by them.
Okay, so if you say 99% is caused by them, it means that nobody else is at fault. Probably that's where their anger is. They will not deny that there are bad eggs within the military that aid and abet in all of these things. They will not deny that aspect of them. When they catch them, they discipline them. But that they are not involved at all and that this is not a problem, no. Everybody in this ecosystem has a part of the blame. Everyone in this ecosystem. And we need to sit down, honestly, president, military, communities, those who are in pipeline surveillance, plus those who are in the bunkering business themselves.
So, Mr. Cole, like the conversation we had on subsidy, the kind of money in the hands of these cabals and the kind of money in the hands of these criminal network.
You have to bring them in. They must be a part. You see, because they are not a part of that discussion.
Some of them are as rich as the state.
So they must be part of the discussion. They must be let to know.
So these people are known.
It's not hidden.
And they are highly placed people in the society.
You can tell them. Some of them may have grown through the creeks. Some of them, you see their lifestyle change. You see somebody whose lifestyle has changed. You see the houses have changed. You see the cars have changed. You see the money that is spent. So you know, this is a society where when we were growing up, if you started showing money and they did not know where it came from, everybody will ostracize you from the society. Today it has changed. You don't care where your money comes from.
When your sudden money comes,
when sudden money, you're a chief tomorrow. When your sudden money comes, you become a political juggernaut. When your sudden money comes, everybody is addressing you. So it is not hidden. People know almost immediately within the community that this is what is going on.
Mr. Dokubo's facts may not be correct in entirety. Do you agree? Because that's what the military is saying.
99% is too much. It's way too high.
So because he's saying that some of, and he's suggesting that his boys can help. And there are those who have criticized that maybe he's out of job.
No.
That's why he's doing that.
You know, there's something. When I was at NABS, I came across a military term which I believe is part of the solution and should be deployed. And I would advise Mr. President in this one that when speaking to the military, you should ask them about CIMIC, Civil Military Cooperation, which is something they've deployed a bit effectively in the Northeast. Kinetic force, using force alone, will never solve this problem. But the civil military cooperation, which is a global thing that has been working, but here in Nigeria is being done, is a part of the solution that can be deployed within the Niger Delta. Because it begins to have an interaction one-on-one, one face-to-face, with those who are victims, those who are perpetrators, all of them, to find the solution as to what to do. I think the other thing that we must do as time goes on is that we must begin to move the military back from day-to-day activity with civilians. I think it has demystified our military to a large extent. I don't think the military is happy with that. When the military comes out, in any country, if you see the military come out, you know that this is a serious issue. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, over the last 20 years, we have had the military engage in road checkpoints, the kind of badge operations that Asari was talking about. The military is way too visible in our society now.
The military has responded and they said, look, Mr. Asari, stop saying this, bring out the names, and there is, I've forgotten the operation that the Navy is conducting around the area. Perhaps it will show up on the screen in a moment. And they say that operation is achieving its purpose. And when we wonder where the military will go from here, because these are touched on the very nerve.
It has.
They call it Operation. Please bring it back, Operation. Something I seem not be able to put my finger on the exact, but it came up on the screen on the bar right now. So, on the final note, if you were the military, the chief of defense staff, to respond to this, to let people know that there are no complicity within the military rank and file, what would you be doing?
Okay, so the first thing I know for a fact that the military has lost men a lot of men in this operation. I know that the Navy has gone into places where they're trying to clean up bunkering, and people have set fire deliberately, knowing that the Navy personnel are there, and they set fire to the operation, and military men have died as a result of that. So that's why I said this is a multi-pronged, multifaceted issue. So if I were the military, the first thing I would do is that I will showcase all the operations that we have carried out in the Niger Delta, first of all, so that people will know that work is ongoing. But I would also look for those who are bad eggs within the system, and I will make an example of them, because that will send the right note down straight away. Anybody in any society that says that all our hands are absolutely clean, we don't have any issue with this, tends to give people a lot of doubt to say that, are you sure something is not being hidden? Especially when one-on-one people know that there are bad eggs within the military. I would say to the military, you're doing a lot of work within the Niger Delta, that much we agree. You've lost men, and operations continue to go on, and this you can showcase. Enter into your CIMIC duties and use CIMIC as a tool to engage within that area. And finally, make sure that any bad egg that is found within the military is disciplined publicly, so that people know immediately that you're doing something with it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tonye, for the insight that you've given tonight on this. And I just hope that the losses that the nation has experienced, the bleeding will be stopped under this government. And for some good reasons, we can plow that money into the society, into education, into health, and in development of this country. Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.